All right, hello everybody. Welcome to another InsightsNow webinar. This week we're going to be talking about popping the packaging industry bubble, and we have two amazing guests with us today. I'm Greg Stuckey. I'll just get the words out right as we begin. I'm Greg Stuckey. I'm the Chief Research Officer at InsightsNow, and I'm delighted to have a couple of wonderful people with us today. We got Jen Higgins, who is the Marketing Manager for Scotch brand, and she's got the joy of launching sustainable products into the market. And Caleb Bryan, who's the Advanced Product Claims Specialist, and he's got the joy of inspiring new behavioral thinking into the way product claims are being approached. So welcome to the both of you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, a quick housekeeping tip as we get going. With this platform, you've got a full screen button. Some people enjoy seeing that their screen a little bit different, but you also have a Q&A panel. This is on the right side. If you're not in full screen, it's at the bottom right corner. If you are in full screen, notice the Q&A. Ask us questions. We would really love to answer your questions. We're going to try and answer them as they come up as we go through the session. And we'll look forward to bringing those questions back into the whole storyline. All right, so let's get going. So today we're excited to be talking about how Scotch brand's working to increase sustainability by decreasing the environmental impact of their products, the challenges of getting people to adopt these behaviors, as well as how we're using implicit and explicit reactions to product claims to improve our ability to impact behavioral change. So Jen, you're going to kick us off today. Why don't you tell us more about sustainability and your focus at 3M and for the Scotch brand?
Great, thank you. Yes. So as Greg mentioned, certainly as a company, 3M, and as a Scotch brand, we have a variety of sustainability goals and commitments. I would imagine many of you on this call are also involved in that sort of work. So specifically within the packaging category, we're really looking at how we can reduce the amount of plastic that's used. We know that by far the majority of plastic ends up in a landfill. So anything we can do to try to offset that will help us improve what's happening in the planet. And so in order to introduce this new product that you see here on the screen, and we'll introduce here in a minute, what we wanted to do was understand, as we're developing the product, how can we communicate the benefits and position it in a way that's meaningful to consumers to get them to try something new. This is meant to be a sustainable alternative to plastic bubble. And if you look at it, particularly in mass retail, plastic bubble is by far the prevailing solution for any sort of cushion or filler inside a box. And so we're not asking consumers to completely change that behavior that's been ingrained in them for years and years, but we do want them to try a new paper-based solution. So that was where InsightsNow came in and really helped us to get at how do we position this product across different channels. So really quickly, before we dive into the research, I think we're going to show a quick video clip that was picked up by one of our local news stations as we just launched this product a couple months ago.
All right, excellent.
Well, a major Twin Cities corporation believes that it has found a greener way to pack and ship delicate objects.
WCCO's David Schuman takes us inside 3M, where the goal is to make plastic bubble wrap a thing of the past.
Tom Corrigan remembers the exact moment the light bulb went off.
It was 4th of July weekend 2019, and I was hanging out in my hammock and sketching some ideas.
What he came up with was a kirigami pattern. Not origami, but another Japanese art form where paper is folded and cut.
Once it expands, you get these wall-like structures that are completely vertical. So from a mechanical engineering point of view, they have a huge strength.
Tom is an inventor for 3M, and his design solved one of the company's problems.
Our goal is to replace plastic bubble with a sustainable solution.
Tom's paper design became Cushion Lock, a green, recyclable alternative to the plastic bubble wrap we all love to pop.
There's an actual growing demand. If you tried to do this 30 years ago, would people have been interested? No, maybe not.
The paper expands to 60 times the size of what it looks like flat and interlocks with itself to create a nest.
The pattern is the magic.
The vast majority of bubble is not recycled. It's about a $175 million market in the US, and most of it is not recycled.
Another advantage of the paper wrap is that it's compact. These boxes hold 1,000 feet of plastic bubble wrap, while the same length of paper is contained in this single roll.
Hopefully people adapt it and decide to start going this direction, and we can make a difference.
In Maplewood, David Schumann, WCCO 4 News.
The cushion lock wrap is available at Target, Staples, and on Amazon.
All right, yeah. So now you have a little bit better idea, maybe what the product is, how it came to life. Just a couple more points on the background and we'll get to the research. But the overall goal of what we were trying to do was to create something that basically replicated the properties and the benefits of cushion that people have come to know and appreciate. You know, protection, certainly, cushioning, but we want to get rid of that plastic. Again, it's very wasteful, not great for the environment. So our team actually formed in 2019 and quickly had to change our way of working with the pandemic setting in, and obviously in 2020. But what we did see during this time, there was an increase in shipping behavior happening. So it's kind of a nice time to be working in this area. You know, people are staying at home, so they're having to send things to their loved ones who they might not see at a more regular basis. And so the solution that Tom just mentioned in the video is this curbside recyclable product. It protects, it cushions, it actually interlocks on itself to help with shipping, also moving and storage, we can work for as well. And so we have some fun facts that Caleb has really helped us as we look at the different benefits, but every roll of 1,000 feet that you saw in the video can actually offset up to 14 pounds of plastic. So the more rolls of this that we can sell, less paper being diverted to landfills. And the input material also plays a role into how we're talking about this product, and that it's made from 100% recycled paper as well. So it's kind of got the beginning of life, end of life story. We need to figure out with consumers, how do we tell them about that in a way that resonates?
Yeah, I think that's super exciting. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Getting my hands around some of this.
Right, Greg, we're excited for you to get your hands on it too. But before that, we want to continue to build up this story that we've been telling you about why we think there needs to be disruption in the packaging industry. So if we go way back when, even 25 years before I was born, sometime in that time frame, plastic bubble became a thing. It was offered up as an opportunity to replace newspaper as a protective packaging solution. And so maybe it's a little bit ironic that we're coming back to paper now, 60 some years later, but at the time and still potentially for a little bit carrying forward, this plastic bubble alternative was kind of interesting. If we move forward a couple of decades, though, we start to see that plastic is becoming more pervasive in at least the US market, likely around the world. But here in the US, per capita plastic waste had gone up to 60 pounds a year, which is kind of impressive. By 2018, that hit 218 pounds a year. And so you can imagine it just keeps growing from there. Our US plastics recycling rate was estimated to be about 9% as a total of plastics produced. And then, as Jen said, in 2019, Tom was apparently sitting in his hammock and he thought about how do we make a protective packaging wrap that essentially creates a hammock as well. And we formed a team around it because Tom is convincing and exciting. And someday maybe some of you will get a chance to meet him. But that was 2019. And so that we started things off in 2021 after watching kind of the first year of the pandemic. We got to see some of the numbers about e-commerce shipping growing. Obviously, most of us were not going to stores and retailers during that first year. We also saw that plastic recycling rates dropped as consumers kind of lost that opportunity for store drop-off recycling, or in some cases it was even turned off because there was fear of contaminated plastics. We saw that recycling rate drop. And we also continue to see globally an increased regulatory pressure on plastic waste. So what does that even mean? Like in the future, will we even be able to use plastic packaging? And so again, building on the Scotch brand's hopes and dreams of bringing this paper alternative to the market in 2022, we did actually launch the retail format. And as you heard in that video, there are a couple of stores likely in your area that are stocking our retail format. And so as we got this retail format to the shelf, we wanted to see how these claims resonate. And so here are 5 to start with. Perhaps you can drop it into the chat or the Q&A. Like, what do you think is the most compelling at this point? And we'll see how you rack up against the actual research. But we really leaned into protection because that's what people want when they think about shipping. How am I going to get this, cookie jar to grandma so that she can make the cookies and ship them back to me safely? We looked for that sustainability attributes both in the kind of paper input that we used and also the end of life for the consumer. And then again, as Jen highlighted, we offset a pretty good chunk of plastic for every one of our 1,000-foot rolls that are used. And probably not what you're going to use in your house, but if you wanted to find one, we could probably get you one. And you can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
So as Tom hinted in that video that you saw earlier, many of us are familiar with origami, but perhaps not kirigami. And so kirigami actually takes paper and it cuts it and folds it. And so here I've actually got one of our 30-foot rolls. If I had a bubble one, it would be bigger yet in diameter than this. It looks like it's a bit of flat paper, but we've cut a die pattern into it. And I think with my blur pattern, you can't necessarily see that. But it's flat. You unroll maybe a shoulder's width length, and then you can stretch it. And so as it stretches, it goes from like a flat paper to a 3D structure. And then you can take that 3D structure and wrap it around, again, that cookie jar. I guess I have cookies on the mind because it's right after lunch. But you can wrap it around your item until it fills up a box. And then as those hands on the right-hand side show, you can slip that item into the box, get it out for shipping or moving, or, if for some reason you need to store it. It works great.
Yeah.
And so we were excited to throw this to Greg and kind of, Greg, help us figure out, how should we work with consumers to talk about this?
Right. Well, that was actually that first intro call was pretty cool because one of the challenges which is kind of unique in this particular space is that Cushion Lock, actually, you came to us with just a huge amount of really fantastic possibilities, right? So you actually have so many wonderful features here that selecting the best ones to focus on is a bit of a challenge. And your initial qual that you had done and your earlier research had identified even different categories of information. So there was claims around protection, claims around ease of use, what kind of space savings it could have, the value proposition that comes with it as well in terms of its expandability, et cetera, so forth, and sustainability claims, obviously a big component piece, as well as the different ways that it could be applied and how it could be used. So one of the challenges then that you're presenting is, well, how do we figure out where to put our focus? How do we figure out what's going to work with people? And at InsightsNow, we always take a behavioral approach to all of our challenges. We always want to understand, well, what are we doing that with this information that's going to impact people's behavior at the end of the day? Because if we just ask people what they like and don't like, that doesn't really get you very far in terms of impact on behavior, because everybody has fantastic aspirations, but their actual resulting behavior may not follow their aspirations all the time. So selecting the right behavior really, or the right claims really requires us to do some more behavioral thinking. And what we needed to be able to accomplish in this, if you think about the way people's habits have been ingrained with plastic bubble all this time, they're so used to saying, I want to ship something, grab the plastic bubble and off we go. And they keep that same behavior going time and time again. Well, we want the wrap and protect behavior to continue, right? We want that routine to continue. We don't want to disrupt that. But what we do want is them to make different selections of what protection to use when they're putting their products in the mail. So it's understanding where in the process, where are we trying to disrupt? What part of that process are we trying to disrupt? And if we understand where we want to disrupt, that's going to help us pick the right claims to go into the process or into our research. Now, the research itself is also kind of interesting. So from a traditional approach, the way most people traditionally approach claims work, you're typically assessing relatability. Basically, you're looking at how believable is this claim, how unique is this claim, how well does it fit with the brand, And then you're really looking for which of the claims have higher scores or maybe pass a hurdle that you've preset for your category. Relatability is definitely a good way to go, but relatability is still really focused in on those aspirational elements. It doesn't really tell you what's going to connect with a behavior. A slightly more behavioral approach is choice. So a lot of conjoint oriented or derivations of conjoint type methods where you're putting different claims up against each other and having people pick which claim is more impactful, more relevant to you. And making those choices does give you a little bit better handle on which claims are going to work. But the challenge here is that you don't really understand where that claim is going to go in terms of behavior. You're going to get certainly a ranking of them, but you're not going to be able to know if all my claims are terrible claims or all my claims are good and just as good as each other. So what we like to do here is say, well, let's get one step beyond. Let's get to some metrics that we know are predictive of behavior. So there's two types of metrics in our implicit, explicit metrics, right? An implicit reaction is when you see something and bam, you go right away. Explicit is something that when you see it, it causes you a little bit of pause. So implicit explicit testing gives you two key pieces. It gives you sentiment, right? Whether you're positive or negative towards a particular claim, as well as then your reaction. So are you disrupted, or is this something that's going to nudge you because it's an intuitive fit to what you're already doing? So within that, you really do want to measure in a really simple way a person's reaction. So how this comes about, it's fairly straightforward. In a questionnaire, you've put people into a prime, you've put them into the moment of thinking about going through their process of getting ready to wrap a package, and then you put different claims in front of them and have them react to them. Is this a claim that's relevant to you, yes or no? And then understanding from a calibration that we do with each person, whether that is faster than an implicit reaction time for that particular person in that moment, or it's slower. So if it's faster, that's an implicit reaction, and those implicit reactions are more likely to nudge a person's behavior along. So it will fit with what their current beliefs are, and it will encourage that habit flywheel to keep going in the direction it always is going. If it's disruptive, if it's explicit, then you're going to see that make a person pause just for a little bit and go, ooh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And if they're slowing you down, or if we're slowing them down and in a positive way, then that's going to be a positive disruption that can impact them for new change. So if you can get them to make that pause at the store shelf or online, it gives them the opportunity to consider alternatives that they hadn't considered in the past, bring in those aspirational goals such as, hey, yes, sustainability is important to me. I want to consider that more in my purchase decision here. All right, so how does this come to life? So when you look at an overall metric, let's take two claims. One claim would be that this cushion lock is fast and easy to use. Another claim would be that it takes up 85% less space. And if we take a look at those two claims, if we just look at how relevant they are, you would see that overall 96%, 95% of the people felt both of those claims were completely relevant to them. So when you just look at a traditional metric, you're getting a piece of the story. But if you break that down into the implicit and explicit reactions, you can see that fast and easy to use is 83% of the people had an implicit reaction to that. So it's much more likely to nudge people, whereas the takes up 85% less space was a little bit more of a disruptive claim. So up to 27% of the people were being disrupted by that claim. So it gave them a little bit of a pause in a very positive way. So when we look at these two claims, so a traditional approach gives you a little bit of information, an implicit explicit approach gives you now a little bit more information so that you can figure out, well, okay, which claims are going to do what to people's behavior and what do I want to pick?
Hey, Greg, before you go off the slide, what would you recommend as like ranges that people would look for nudging and disrupting?
Yeah, so love that question. Love that question. Typically, if what we like to see is from a disruption standpoint, if you can change 20% of the population's mindset. If you can disrupt 20% or more of the people, you're going to see a very significant impact on your behavior at shelf in this particular case, or during the buying or using process. So we've been using 20% of the population being cut off, or being disrupted as a key cutoff, that where we've seen above that you get really good impact. Below that, not so much. It's still impacting some percentage of the population, but if you think about how big your target market is, getting a product introduced, all of the other factors that go along with availability and things in market, 20% has been a pretty good cutoff for us.
Great.
All right, so one of the first challenges was, can we figure out which of those territories were going to be most relevant? Were there ones that were more valuable or less valuable for us? So when we look across the 6 spaces that we have here, we found that protection, ease of use, space savings, value a little less relevant to people, sustainability a little more, and then the way it's being applied, the most getting the highest scores for being relevant to people. And the types of claims behind that really were more nudge and disrupt within those particular spaces were under protection. You had things like simple claim of proven protection that aligns with people's current beliefs. You have advanced self-locking technology that was more about protection, but it's more disruptive. And so people seeing that, a lot higher percentage of those people are being disrupted. Same with ease of use, cushion conforms, right? It's easy to use. You don't need tape. That was a big piece of that particular statement. And that lack of need for tape was something that people were like, yeah, that's perfect. I need that. That fits with my hopes and dreams and paradigms. And then expand, wrap, and protect. That's caused them a little bit of a disruption, I think, because in that particular case, you're going expand. That's kind of new, right? Wrap, that makes sense. Protect, that's hopeful. But you put that expand piece in there and it changes a little bit about how that ease of use comes about. And then under sustainability, you can see the key pieces there: sustainable alternative and made with 100% recycled paper being more disruptive. So interesting part that even within sustainability, which there's not a lot of sustainability if you're thinking about plastic, some claims were much more likely to nudge people. Others were more likely to disrupt people, even within the sustainability space. And then application, really what moment in life is this going to be applied to? Typically, we do see application-oriented claims being scoring very, very well for people because you push them right into the moment where you want them to be using. So great for moving storage. That scored extremely well in that nudge space. It's typically less likely that application-oriented or moments-oriented claims are highly disruptive because it makes people go, wow, I've never thought of using a product that way before. That usually undertakes a whole new meaning and is disrupting their routine, which, if you remember back to our flywheel, we weren't trying to disrupt the routine. We were trying to disrupt the choice. All right, so let's see how that came about when you guys tried to put it on pack.
Yeah, I'll first say that if people do come up with a creative way to use this, let us know, but please don't hold us legally accountable for whatever happened. And that would be awesome. So as you saw me hold up this roll, it's about 3 inches in diameter. Maybe not, this might be a prototype one. About 3 inches in diameter by about 12 inches long. So a little over 12 inches long. And so when you can imagine this carton being fairly form-fitting, we have very limited billboard to kind of get all of these great messages out and across. But we just wanted to walk through the packaging with you and show you some of our strategy here. So as Greg said, that disrupt kind of 20%, maybe a little bit more would be great to see for starting to work on disrupt claims. And so here we've partnered a nudge claim of the proven protection with that badge on it to kind of really draw your eye into it, with a good disrupt claim of expand, wrap, protect for ease of use. And as we continue then to walk around kind of the packaging, again, tying a nudge and a disrupt with the made with 100% recycled paper to remind people that, this has a good sustainability story potentially compared to plastic cushion wraps. Continuing to walk along, talking about some of the technology that makes this so awesome and gets us so excited. So, you know, the self-locking technology, so you can kind of feel comfortable when this is nested around your product, that you're not going to need tape, or, you know, it's not going to come unfurled as soon as you put it inside a box to ship it. Tied with that nudging behavior of, you know, these are the things that you're looking for often when you're shipping or moving or trying to store something. And then just again, that application claim that is highly attuned for people who are, you know, walking through Target and they're looking for, you know, in kind of the shipping moving planogram, I'm looking for something that would do this for me. And so here it is, calling it straight out on the packaging. So that's kind of at least a bit of the story of packaging. And this test came out at a perfect time because we were kind of trying to finalize some of our packaging designs. And so to be able to hand our packaging and our design team some of this research and say like, hey, these are, you know, some of the things we should consider as we line this all up, was very useful.
Yeah, and I was pretty excited about that, how creative the team got with being able to put that many claims in concert there, and the story that comes about with that. That was pretty cool. So I love when research inspires.
Yeah, Greg, I mean, you're the expert in this research, certainly. Would you mind kind of sharing your assessment of how we took the learning and applied it in this?
Oh yeah. So this is actually a fantastic application. I actually think you did exceptionally well with the billboard space, especially within this particular space, because you do want to be in this particular situation. You do want to be both nudging behavior and disrupting at the same time, and which is a unique challenge. So to be able to cleverly pair nudge disrupts together that have a theme to them and be able to hit the different areas is, I think, a really nice piece of art that really came through. And I agree. It's like really have to hit the one thing that you really know is overarching table stakes, right? They're going to see a new product on shelf. And if they've never used, you know, expanding paper, their first reaction is, does it do my cost of entry rule, right? Which is it has to protect. That's the whole reason for wrapping something to begin with, is that you're trying to get protection. So the fact that you can straight up say proven to protect, right, essentially deflates that, or ensures that they're drawn straight in, right? Because you've got that opportunity. And then you put a disruptor right there in front of them, and it's like expand. That's kind of new. And that piece in concert with each other, I think works really, really well.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so curious. So we have a good ask in the question Q&A here. So curious how the research was conducted, if people were subject to external distractions, et cetera, so forth. How would you adjust? So that's a really good question. Distractions during. So this was conducted as a online survey. During online surveys, one of the things that you need to be able to accomplish when you're doing research around implicit and explicit is you have to be able to set context for people, which, if you put your psychology hat on, that is called priming. So you've got to be able to prime people exceptionally well. So how we primed people in this study is one of the most common ways we do it, is we have them tell a personal story. So we're having them tell a personal story about when they were shipping a product that they needed to wrap and put into the mail, right? So you're having them tell that personal story. So now they're personally vested in something that's not ethereal, but they're personally vested. So in this study, we also used the concept and a little animated GIF so that they could see how the product worked. So they've got a personal story and they've got conceptual engagement as well, and then going into the claim set afterwards. All right. Yeah, so it's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now this isn't all the claims, right? And one of the cool things about claims work is that you've got on-pack, but you've got a lot of other places that you can use claims. And so one of the things that we found that we recommend is that your claims that are maybe a little less relevant, but also really disruptive, those are fantastic claims when people are already in that explicit mindset. So if I'm doing, say, online shopping, and I want to read reviews, I want to look more into the product, I'm already fully disrupted at that point. So adding more of the disruptive things that people need to maybe think about a little bit more, or maybe a little bit harder to think about, are fantastic for your online. So in this particular case, that means those things that were, a little bit less relevant, but have some other play. So all-in-one cushion filler, using less storage space, expansion to, expanding to different lengths, et cetera, so forth. Those elements all are much, much more disruptive, and therefore are right for off-pack application as well. So Jen, you want to take us through a few how some of those came to life?
Yeah, so this is just an example of our pretty new Amazon listing for the product. And you can see that Greg had mentioned that 20% threshold for kind of the disruptive claims. And here's where we brought in some of those for those consumers shopping online. So we developed some, A+, B+ content. We have some of it weaved throughout our bullet copy as well. So just using this as an opportunity to provide that information and give them that moment to think about it as they're browsing online and shopping.
Yeah.
Well, really
go for it.
I was going to say that example from that WCCO clip of the 6 red boxes of bubble wrap versus the 1 roll of cushion lock. And because we can't show that video to every person that comes online and sees it, that's why we've chosen that image for the use up to 85% less storage space. And you can imagine we have an application engineer for this program who's 5'4", and so that bubble wrap, and she's super skinny because she's a mountain biker and stuff. That tower of bubble wrap like dwarfs her every time she stands in front of it to give a demonstration of the
demonstration. That's really good. And I actually like this particular application. You were asking how well, my evaluation, how well you did. I think there are some claims that lend themselves better to a visual more than other claims. So proven to protect, as an example, the shield is great, but it's hard to get a real life image that explains that. Whereas using less storage space in general and any of the expansion things here, the visual tells just as much as the story as the text itself. And I think that in scenarios like this, if you think about people shopping and walking into the, if let's say they're walking into the aisle, they're going to naturally see how big of a physical difference that is, right? So you could certainly have in-store flyers that call that attention out, bring that to life as well, so that, because that's something they can visually see. They see plastic right next to this small tiny box, right? And it's impactful. Online though, you've got to come up with a different way. So being able to showcase this in an active way, I think is a really nice, clever approach to being able to see that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So then, just to take it home, a couple of points before we jump into some more Q&A, hopefully, if people have questions. But as Greg has talked about this implicit explicit test, and as I learned more about it and brought the team to it, this is an exciting test. It's a unique test. It's a very interesting test that has really allowed us to kind of parse out and select different claims for different opportunities based on this kind of behavioral characteristic that can get pulled out in the testing. And it taught us, I think we're going to carry this forward in all of our claims, thinking about how the next innovation, what comes after cushion lock, is going to be perhaps better aligned to some of these behavioral changes, or perhaps we'll have to come back and look for more behavioral changes and figure out, what Tom dreamed up on the hammock this summer and how we can translate that to consumers in the future.
Get us all hammocks.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, building on what Caleb was saying, I found this method in particular kind of brought an additional layer to thinking about that psychology and the behaviors and how we can apply the learnings in different channels or different tactics, different consumer facing touch points. And I think here, I'll say this is kind of a generalization, but overall, we've found that, related to sustainability, kind of all things being equal, consumers want to lean into that sustainable choice. And that thinking is certainly, I think, evolving very much so. But for this particular category, we still had to make sure that we were, prioritizing protection. Like the item has to get from point A to point B. We need to convince consumers that this product will help that, and then sustainability could kind of follow. So that was kind of a key learning, at least for this category. Again, kind of generalizing how we think about sustainability. And as Caleb already kind of mentioned, I do think it was an interesting methodology, full transparency. My first time using this implicit, explicit work. So it was, again, another layer, kind of digging a little bit deeper and really taking a pause to think about how we're being very intentional in applying the different features and benefits in different places. Yeah. And Greg was a great partner, I would say, in really helping us interpret the results, helping us plan for the research. So very much appreciate Greg and team at InsightsNow and helping us think about this project.
Well, I certainly appreciate you as well. I mean, your team was fantastic, and as you can see, I mean, I think you're implementing very, very well too. So to be able to pull in new metrics is always a unique challenge. To be able to apply them and get the creative people to leverage that in a new and different way, those things are to be applauded. So it's a hard first step, right? And then once you get into the understanding all the pieces, then it goes nice and smooth. So fantastic work, absolutely, from all of you. And of course, we're huge into sustainability, so this was also just near and dear to our hearts in general. And we love being able to see how we can improve and make a cleaner, healthier, happier world. So that was fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So Caleb, you actually wanted to share with us a video. Another video, and while Caleb is queuing up that video, I'm gonna pause my sharing here. While you're pulling up that video, everybody else, can you go ahead and ask more questions? Put more of those comments into the Q&A or the chat there, and let's as you queue that up, we'll take some Q&A afterwards.
Awesome. I will admit the volume on this could be quite dramatic for your system, so I have tried to tone it back on my system, but I can't answer for yours. But this is just another opportunity to excite you about this product and how we brought it to life. We thought it could be fun while you're thinking of more questions to ask us.
With continued growth of e-commerce, more and more plastic packaging waste is going in the trash because it's not readily curbside recyclable. Now, 3M has created a 100% recycled paper alternative. Welcome to Cushion Lock. To embrace circularity, we start with 100% recycled paper. Then utilize our 3M innovation to transform it into a proprietary pattern that creates a space-saving, expanding, conforming, cushioning protective wrap that's curbside recyclable. All sorts of intellectual property has been filed accordingly because we're different than the other expanding paper wraps that have been around for years. So let's roll out the future by showing Cushion Lock in action. We recommend wrapping fragile items in multiple layers to obtain about 2 inches of thickness. It's fast and easy to use. No scissors or tape are needed before sealing the box, locking in protection throughout the shipping journey. Rigorous testing has been completed to confirm its proven protection. So when Cushion Lock wrap package shipments arrive to their final destination, simply tear open the wrap, and now the box and Cushion Lock protective wrap can be readily curbside recycled. And then the cycle can start all over again.
Very cool. Love that video. Love that video.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about a little bit about how that video came about.
So every year, 3M has a demo video competition for our application engineers, and it can either come through a collaboration with marketing, so like us working with somebody like Jen, or some of us sometimes go rogue and start asking questions and putting together stories. So this particular one, we worked with our paper supplier to get some of that recyclability imagery because we don't have our own facilities and that kind of thing. And we just kind of built from there. So it was my house where I was opening that package, and please ignore the weeds because I hadn't gotten to them that week. We just wanted to really highlight how cool it is and all the different features and attributes, and we like to play with cameras in different ways. So even pulling in the slow motion or the high speed GoPro as we traveled around for shipping and that kind of thing. So just really trying to pull the whole story together.
I think that's to me that's an exciting part, you know, and a part of research. I think that often is missed out. Like we often get so busy in our research lives that we're getting like, give me the facts, get me going, get me onto the next project, and then to be able to say, well, no, let's make sure we, you know, pull in the emotive connection to everybody, and let's tell a good story. I love that piece coming to life as well.
Yeah.
Makes you just want, it just makes you want to get in there and do more.
I'm going to Iceland in just a couple weeks. I'm tempted to take Cushion Lock there and see what waterfall I can wrap in Cushion Lock.
Ooh. That'd be good. That'd be good. All right. Let's see. Questions coming in. We don't have too many yet, so if you're sitting there having a question, you get it in there so we can address it. But one of the questions coming in is what % of the reduction by use of bubble wrap was represented by the 3M goal? So was there any sort of a parsing of like, hey, we hope this actually accomplishes this much of our goal?
There is some of that, and it's tricky because we've launched Cushion Lock, but we continue to learn more and more about it. So at one point we set the goalpost to say like this much Cushion Lock offsets this much plastic bubble. You know, as we understand more about its space filling capabilities and that, I think we're going to only up that number. Now that 125 million pounds is for 3M collectively. So right. You think we make packaging tape and some other plastic objects, and we have plastic packaging for just about everything. And so that 125 million is collective across all of the platforms. And so I think the % reduction, at least in the first couple of years, is going to be pretty small. But hopefully as people adopt it, it will only grow. So I don't have an exact percentage at this moment.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think
we have the irony that we sell plastic cushion wrap.
I was gonna say, as you saw in the first video.
Yeah. So as we work to balance the two, that will also help with that reduction.
For sure.
Yeah. Ultimately, our goal really is to transition out of that and hopefully get consumers to go on this journey with us and make the switch to the sustainable alternative for sure.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's like a bigger part of that sustainability story is the unique challenge that we all have in terms of small changes that we can make. And then also the fact that, you know, as companies, we often are, you know, it's part of our revenue streams, right? To have something that maybe isn't quite so sustainable in your process, and to be able to figure out and overcome that and then make that change. From a behavior standpoint, we know that it's extremely hard to make radical change really, really fast. And you get a lot more pickup, and you actually accomplish your goal much faster if you can make steps in that process. So to be able to move the dial, you know, one piece at a time, one chess move at a time, actually gets you to the end goal of more sustainability faster than if you tried to say, well, this product line is just gone now, and hey, everybody is forced to do something brand new. And so we're certainly seeing that behavior change. We see that in the food industry a lot, where you're adding small shifts and changes to the products to make them more nutritionally sound. So it's the same behavioral rule, just applied to a different area in terms of sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't tried to eat this yet. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yes, I don't think so. That would not be good. So let me ask you this though. So we did all the research. Was there any going into it? Did you have any like favorite claims? Like, my goodness, I really hope X works, or anything that you felt was really good?
Oh.
Interesting question.
It's
Caleb?
I was gonna say, as Greg showed on that one slide, we had like 31
Yeah.
claims thought up, and some of them were slight variations of one another. And in my role, it's a lot of how are we going to substantiate what we want to say to make sure we can say it. And so there were probably some claims that I hoped ranked high because the substantiation work would be lower, and some that I hoped ranked high because I want this product to succeed. I think the proven protection one is great, and it was really good to see that rate so highly. I think as we understand the expansion properties and tie that in with the space savings, I think I would have expected that to be higher because the junk drawer in our kitchen is only so big, and so if now we can tell you that you're going to store this in your junk drawer instead of losing it in some other closet, like I guess I would have thought some of that would have come up a little higher.
Yeah.
And I would say something that was surprising a little bit, maybe not necessarily wasn't my favorite or anything, but surprising was the kind of the value category. We know from being in this category for many years that it is very price sensitive for consumers. And so there are a lot of categories that are very commoditized. So I was a little bit surprised that it didn't actually come to the top or closer to the top compared to some of these others. So that was maybe one surprise.
Yeah, I was thinking about that one too, because that one seems to be like you said, it's almost cost of entry, or maybe it's even last minute decision because of the way you're going through that shopping. And I think that it's like the 1-2 punch. If you can disrupt people with something that hits their aspirations, like, oh, it's more sustainable than the plastic alternative. It's like, ooh, but I'm not going to quite go there if I can't get the value. So you've got to have all the other pieces in part, which is why I was so excited about so many claims on the package, because it shows the value proposition, even though you're not really necessarily directly calling out the value proposition. So it's that indirect call out that helps it come together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fantastic. I don't see any other questions that we haven't gotten to or we didn't answer as we went through our session. So thank you very much, Jen. Thanks, Caleb. Really appreciate your time today. It's been a fantastic session. For anybody else who's watching the playback of this, if you're interested in more, we've got case studies online. If you want to see write-ups of this, that is up and available. If you want to see a little bit more about implicit, explicit, there's white papers and examples of many ways to use that technology or that capability or question series on our website. So feel free to jump in there, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. So thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.